Crossing the Line, a mystery crime thriller by Declan Conner. Homicide detective Grace Rutherford rolled over on her mattress. She sighed and then grabbed the source of the annoying ringing coming from her nightstand, then cracked open an eye. The number on the screen of her cell phone blurred, unable to focus. "Who is it?" she croaked out, then cleared her throat.
Dispatch here. We have a code 207 over on the 65 highway in a rest area 2 miles out of town. The victim is Jane Rhodes, a known prostitute. We have a highway patrol officer at the scene. I've informed forensics and the coroner's office.
She wanted to protest, but then she knew it wasn't the dispatcher's fault they were calling her on her scheduled day off, not with half of her colleagues down with flu. "I'm on it," she said, then closed the call. Reaching out, the phone slipped from her fingers back onto the nightstand. Her shoulders hit south, and she groaned. There wasn't a note left on the nightstand with a single rose. No aroma of coffee awaiting her. All there was to say that her visitor had been there was a dent in the pillow next to her and the duvet turned back at his side of the bed. Dick. She could recall he'd said his name was, short for Richard. Some Dick, she thought. Rutherford smiled at the recollection of exchanging body fluids. An itch scratched. The failed visit to see her daughter was to blame for her indiscretion. It had sent her on a bar crawl and into revenge-screwing mode. "You're an hour and a half late," her ex had said. "You can't see her. She has homework." It wasn't just the pain of her foot trapped in the door that had annoyed her. She grasped at an image of his secretary, and now his wife, dancing up and down on her toes behind him, working him like a ventriloquist's dummy. A bullet to Bimbo's forehead would have solved the problem, but created another. Rutherford didn't think Bimbo was worth the effort of her drawing her pistol, only to be banged up for life with no visitation rights at all to her daughter. What really pained her was walking down the drive and glancing back to see her daughter, Jess, crying at her upstairs bedroom window. She cursed under her breath that the hours she worked had cost her the right for Jess to live with her. Rutherford threw her legs over the side of the bed, rose to her feet, then slipped her silk wrap around her and stumbled into the living room, picking up her discarded clothes trail. It was like an Easter egg hunt as she followed the discarded clothes through to the kitchen and then to her front door. Her head pounded on the way back to her bedroom and on into her bathroom. She glanced in the mirror and shrugged. The sculptured face that she'd laboriously put on the night before was now streaked with mascara and smudged lipstick. She took a quick shower and dressed. Detective mode took over as she slipped her pistol into her shoulder holster and then locked the apartment door behind her. Somehow, wearing her black pantsuit and carrying her pistol gave her a sense of purpose with a surge of power. Restored to a semblance of normality, the feelings of worthlessness that had engulfed her were swiped away in that moment. Her mind darted in a multitude of directions as she climbed into her car and pulled out of the parking lot. It was always the same on a new case. The anticipation of what she'd find at the scene started her adrenaline flowing. As she approached the rest area, there was just the one highway patrol car. The officer was sitting with his backside on the hood of his car and smoking a cigarette. She pulled up behind him and parked, then rolled down her window. The officer stepped over to her. "What have we got?" she asked.
"See for yourself,"
the officer said sharply, then stubbed out his cigarette, adding to a pile of other stubs. The forensic crime investigator's vehicle pulled up behind her as she hauled herself out of her seat. "Have you run a tag check?" Rutherford asked the officer.
"Yeah, it belongs to the victim. Her rap sheet shows the same tattoo on her arm."
Rutherford noticed the passenger door was wide open to the victim's car. "Was it like that when you arrived?"
"No, I thought she was asleep, but she didn't respond. It was partly open off the catch when I arrived around an hour ago. Checked her pulse to confirm she was dead rather than drugged up on heroin, then phoned it in."
The crime investigator stepped over to them.
"Leave me to it,"
said James, the forensic guy, and edged them out of the way. Then he leaned inside the car. Where does her rap sheet say she works her tricks? She asked the officer.
Main Street.
Rutherford glanced around. There wasn't a house in sight to start pounding doors for any witnesses. The rest area where she'd parked was masked by thick foliage on what was a country road. Whoever had done the deed must have left on foot. It was a good spot for a prostitute to bring her tricks, with no prying cameras, except it was miles out of town, and time was money in their game. Not only that, but it was also her vehicle. She assumed that if she worked Main Street, she'd solicit on foot, climb into her tricks vehicle, and likely have a spot nearby to take them. That left her scratching at the hair on her head as to why it happened in her car.
No blood. It looks as though she's been strangled,
James, the forensic guy, said.
We've had a break, though. You can come and see now. I found the condom in her clenched hand.
He held up a condom with his tweezers, then dropped it into an evidence bag. Stepping over to the victim's vehicle, she thought that finding the condom in her hand didn't make sense. Not for a murderer to have missed looking for it as a priority to get rid of DNA evidence before leaving. Her eyes coursed over the ground, but there wasn't the usual telltale sign of discarded condoms for it to be a regular spot to take clients. The coroner's body snatcher van arrived, and they removed the body from the vehicle. The forensic guy stepped over to her.
I've arranged for the vehicle to be collected and taken to our garage for further forensic tests. Once we have the DNA from the sperm, you'll likely have your murderer. She had false nails, but there isn't any blood on them and none of them are broken. But just in case she fought back and scratched him, the medical examiner will take scrapings at the autopsy.
What's in her purse?
Driver license, unused condoms, $400 in crumpled notes, and the usual makeup. Oh yeah, and she had a cell phone with the battery dead.
Pass her license here. She made a note of the address. Rutherford didn't look forward to her next port of call, however many times she had trodden that path. She dreaded there would be children at the victim's home. Fishing her cell phone from her pocket, she dialed dispatch. Detective Rutherford here. Can you run a check to see if anyone reported a missing person overnight? She reeled off the victim's name and address.
One moment,
The dispatcher said. Rutherford had avoided looking at the corpse in any detail. Not having had any breakfast, she hadn't thought her stomach would have taken it. A quick glance inside the vehicle and relief struck that it wasn't a bloody scene. It was like the officer had said. Jane's seat was wound down, so she likely appeared to be asleep to the officer. The odd things were that her skirt had been in place and her pants hadn't been around one of her ankles. The murderer must have strangled her after they'd done the deed. The dispatcher interrupted her train of thought.
Sorry it took some time to find the report. I have the info you asked for. It was typed in on our computer misspelt. Her partner phoned it in at 2 a.m. It's down for an officer to call later this morning.
Scrub it. I'm on my way there now. Give me the name of her partner.
He only gave his first name, Harvey, and it was from a payphone. He told us he'd have to call social services for her kids if she didn't return.
The tow truck arrived. She turned to the officer. As soon as they're done here, you can go. Send your report over to robbery and homicide and mark it for my attention.
Thank goodness for that. It's been a long night.
The officer tipped her a salute and climbed into his car. Rutherford set off for town. She knew the area, but she hadn't been there for many years. The journey was something of a haze until she arrived. It wasn't like the last time she visited as she pulled over at the victim's apartment block. What had been a pristine new build was now blighted with graffiti. The entrance door to the apartments hung to one side with a broken hinge and a spider's web of glass where someone had kicked in the bottom panel. A smell of urine hit her nose. She walked inside over to the apartment door. The overbearing odor had her retching. Rutherford composed herself, then gave the door her best detective knock. Thankfully, the door opened right away. She stepped back. Rutherford hadn't been expecting to see a well-dressed woman answer. Detective Rutherford. Jane's partner Harvey reported her missing last night. I have bad news, I'm afraid.
You'd better come in. I'm Alice Gibson from Child Protection Services.
Is Harvey here? Rutherford asked as she followed her down the hallway.
No, that's why I'm here. He phoned to say the kids weren't his problem and he had to go.
What time will he be back?
We'd better talk in the kitchen.
Gibson beckoned her through an open door.
He won't be back. Her children are in the living room. I'm trying to get a hold of relatives, but not having any luck. The office is arranging for them to go into care unless you found her. Has she been in an accident?
No, not that. We found her, but unfortunately, she's dead. The social worker tutted, then sighed like it was an inconvenience. In a way, she was pleased there were no relatives to break the news to, followed by floods of tears. It was matter-of-fact giving the news to the social worker, free of emotion. The social worker folded her arms.
That's all I need. That means I'll have to take them.
Did he say where he was going?
No, he had his bags packed at the door waiting. He's not on our records, so he must have been a new boyfriend.
Rutherford sighed. I'll need to talk to the children. How old are they? The care worker threw her a glance as if she had a bad smell under her nose.
No chance. I can't allow that. We'll have to break the news to them after consulting with our resident psychiatrist. Any contact with them will have to be arranged through our attorney.
Rutherford rolled her eyes and thought that was all she needed. A do-gooder social worker going by the book. Listen, this is a murder inquiry. I need to know what they knew about her partner. He could be a person of interest. The social worker snapped a look of disdain at Rutherford.
No. Like I said, it's out of the question. Maybe the neighbors will know. Ask them. Her two youngest are only 3 and 4. Her eldest is 12, but she has learning difficulties. Regardless, I can't allow it.
She handed the apartment keys to Rutherford.
I'd better take them to the office under the circumstances. I've already packed some of their clothes.
A young girl around her daughter's age ran into the kitchen.
Where's Mom? I want my mom.
She began to sob. Tears ran down her cheeks. A vision of Jess, her own daughter, crying at her bedroom window flashed through Rutherford's mind. I'll leave you to it. You can pull the door to on the Yale catch. Rutherford tried to hold herself together. She could barely contain herself until she arrived at her car, and yanking her door open, she slid onto the seat. Rutherford repeatedly head-butted the center of the steering wheel, but it didn't stop the tears. Guilt had struck her for the many times she'd been late for her visits to see Jess, and for the times she couldn't make it when she'd put work first. It hadn't mattered when her husband was at home to see to her, but she knew that she hadn't adjusted since the divorce. She pushed back into her seat. The last time the victim's daughter had seen of her mother was her going off to work. It made her wonder how Jess would cope if that last vision of her was when she'd walk down the drive. Rutherford slapped the steering wheel. A sense of determination rolled through her. The failed access visit would be the last time she would ever let Jess down. The social worker ushered the children out to her car. The eldest child sent a soulful stare at Rutherford, tears still streaking down both her cheeks. Don't worry, I'll find your mom's killer, she mouthed under her breath. That's a promise. The routine investigations into the case in the office over the next few days drove Rutherford to distraction. It was time for some legwork, albeit in the comfort of her car. Rutherford drove slowly along Main Street. The bars were due for closing, so she knew she would have to work fast before the girls started to thin out. The rain didn't stop some of the younger ones propping up the lampposts with their umbrellas protecting them, if not their scanty clothing. They weren't the ones she was looking for. Pimps would have the street marked out, and they'd be watching their investments. She was looking for Candace when she spotted her in an alcove of a storefront. She pulled over, stopped, then powered down her passenger window. Candace stepped over and leaned inside.
Oh, it's you,
the hooker said. Yeah, it's me. Get in, Rutherford said, and reaching over, she pulled on the door release. Candace retracted her umbrella and sidled onto the seat.
Is this business or police business?
You'll get paid for the usual, don't worry. As soon as they cleared Main Street, she checked her rear view to make sure no one was following. Rutherford turned left into an industrial complex and parked at a loading bay, then pulled down the hood to her sweatshirt. She opened her purse, took out a 20 and handed it over.
Better make it quick for 20.
Rutherford reached over and opened her glove compartment, then switched on the vanity light. Candace was well past her sell-by date for her line of work, But at least she knew that with her earning power diminished, she didn't have to worry about her having a pimp. Not only that, but she also knew that the working girls looked to her for advice as a mother figure. "Do you know her?" Rutherford asked, and held up the mug shot of Jane Rhodes.
Yeah. I heard she'd been murdered on the news. How can I help?
"I need you to talk to the girls on the street. I can't go questioning them all when their pimps are watching, or we could end up with more corpses. She had a boyfriend called Harvey. I need to find him."
Never heard of him. What does he look like?
Spoke to a neighbor. She said he was white, in his 40s, bald head, scar on his cheek, powerful build.
Shit. That sounds like her pimp, but he's called Hulk Logan. Least that's what we call him on the street. Don't want to go messin' with him. He's one bad dude.
Where can I find him?
The Rubber Duck Bar on the edge of town. Do you think he killed her?
We don't know anything yet, but I want to give him a tongue lashing for abandoning her kids.
Well, good luck with that.
Candace looked at her watch.
Better get back. The bars'll be closing soon. Drop me at the end of the street in case anyone recognizes your car.
On the drive back to Main Street, the scene of the murder flashed through her mind. Did you see Jane on the night of the murder?
Yeah, she was working the street.
Rutherford's mind ticked over, wondering what else to ask, when it came to her. So, seeing as she was found in her own vehicle, would you say she'd finished work, and she was on her way home?
From what I saw on the news report, they found her in the opposite direction to where she lived. Maybe she had a regular call her and she met up with him.
Maybe. Did you speak to her at all on the night?
Yeah, she was on edge. Said a cop followed her on her last trick, and her punter was drunk, but he didn't stop them.
What time?
Midnight. That's when we all finish.
Rutherford dropped her off. There wouldn't be time to get to the Rubber Duck Bar before it closed, but she headed in that direction anyway. The bar was in darkness when she arrived, but not so dark that she couldn't see that someone had painted over the D on the name on the sign and replaced it with an F. She tapped in the street name for Jane's boyfriend on her keyboard. The result appeared on her inboard computer screen. It came back with a rap sheet as long as her arm and a stack of outstanding warrants. With a history of violence, she was relieved the bar was closed. She called dispatch on her radio, only to find the marshals were already looking for him. She left a message with details of the bar where he hung out and for them to call her if they got a result. Calling it a day, she drove home. Climbing the stairway, she was worn out. She opened the door and trudged through to her bedroom, then dove on the bed, exhausted. Her boss had said to put the case to one side until the DNA came back, but she'd spent most of her spare time trying to track down her boyfriend. Rutherford was sure he would be involved for him to skip out on the kids. Rutherford reached out and turned on the bedside lamp, then picked up the file with her case notes from the nightstand and rolled over. She read through Officer Clive Woodward's report and chewed on her lip. Jane's cell phone records confirmed what Candace had said. The cell tower had her in the vicinity of Main Street all night, then one picked her up when she was almost home. For some reason, she changed direction, and 2 more cell towers picked her up on the way to where she was found until the battery died. There were no calls from anyone, so Candace had gotten that part wrong about a customer phoning her. She wondered if perhaps her partner had arranged to meet her at the rest area after work. But then no self-respecting pimp would have left $400 in her purse, never mind leaving a condom behind. The lubricants from the condom and other particles confirmed it was from the same manufacturer as the ones in her purse, and they weren't the sort that used added spermicide. All her leads for the past week had run her up a blind alley. She wondered if her boss had been right, and she should have waited for the DNA results. It was daylight when she awoke to her phone ringing, still fully dressed and pistol in holster. "Who is it?"
James from Forensics. I have one of the DNA results back, and the autopsy has determined the cause and time of death.
She threw her legs over the side of the bed and stiffened up. "Well, don't keep me in suspense."
We have a match on the DNA. One Harvey Logan, alias Hulk Logan.
Bingo, I knew it. That's her boyfriend.
Not so fast. That sperm sample taken from the cervix had a good percentage of live sperms. It can live for up to 5 days there before they all die off, and there was no rupture in the condom. If the DNA is from her boyfriend, There's every reason for it to be there, alive and kicking. She did die from strangulation, though. The time of death was around midnight to 1 o'clock.
Rutherford sighed, not alert enough to have taken in what he'd said about the sperm. That's not much help just now. She was seen on Main Street at midnight. From the route she took, I think it would be nearer 1 when she died.
You're right there. I saw the cell phone records, but see, there lies a problem.
What problem?
Sperm in a condom doesn't live as long as it would in the cervix, but it doesn't die right away. The sperm in the condom was mostly dead with only a few on their last legs, and I was back at the lab to run the test at 7:45.
She scratched at her brow, still not taking in the implications. So, what does that mean?
It means that the sperm must have ejaculated a while before the time of death, say around 10 to midnight. One other thing. There wasn't an open condom wrapper inside or outside the vehicle. Look, I have to go. I'm expecting the other DNA result on the content of the condom this afternoon, and I have a ton of work.
I'll speak to you as soon as you know something, she said, then hung up. Rutherford stripped and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. As the water cascaded over her, she had a light bulb moment and closed the faucet. It was a long shot, but Candace mentioning that a cop car followed the victim with her last trick of the night got her to thinking. There was a chance that her last customer, or a different one, could have followed her, pulled her over, then asked for second helpings, and suggested the rest area. She quickly dried herself, then dressed. Rutherford dropped her backside on the mattress, picked up her phone, and phoned the sheriff's office. Detective Rutherford here. I hope you can help me. I could do with the roster for highway patrol vehicles that cover Central, Main Street in particular. I'm hoping that one of your officers either had their dash cam on, or if maybe they can recall a vehicle in front of them as they drove along Main Street. It's relating to a murder case I'm investigating.
What date and time?
She rhymed off the date and the approximate time.
That would be the night shift. I'll get back to you.
Rutherford closed the call and picked up a photograph of her daughter from the nightstand. She wondered if, when Jess grew up, she'd understand that if it wasn't for her doing her job, there would be anarchy on the streets, and it was her way of protecting her future. Rutherford doubted Jess would think of it that way. Likely all she'd recall would be the hurt of her not being there for her. She sighed, kissed the photo, then placed it back under the lamp. Her phone rang. She crossed her fingers that it would be the results of the DNA test. Hello?
Jack from the sheriff's office. I have the officer's name. Highway Patrol Officer Clive Woodward.
Really?
Don't know how he does it.
Does what?
Don't know how he works after his wife was mown down by a hit-and-run drunk driver. She died 2 days later.
When was that?
Around 6 weeks ago. Son of a bitch is out on bail. Knowing the justices around here, he'll probably get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Damn county is run by Murphy's Law nowadays. Who was the driver?
Gordon Hughes. We're all hoping he'll step out of line while he's out on bail.
I wouldn't hold my breath, she said, and thanked him, then hung up. Revenge would be sweet if he did step out of line, she thought, recalling wanting to put a bullet in Bimbo's forehead. But then all she had lost was one visitation. She had the rest of her life to make amends. Poor Officer Clive Woodward had lost his wife for good. The scene of Jane's murder had been bugging her all along. Now she knew the condom wrapper wasn't found at the scene. It was likely opened somewhere else. She was betting that the condom was used in a different location too, and then discarded from what James had said about the lifespan of the sperm. With Jane laid down on the retracted seat, the officer wouldn't have seen her. All the same, he would have approached the driver's side and opened that door to check her pulse. Why open the passenger side door unless he climbed over to her? She mused. The phone rang and she answered.
Hi, it's James again. I have that other DNA result from the sperm in the condom.
Don't tell me you have a match to a hit-and-run DUI driver, Gordon Hughes, and I'm guessing he has a prior for soliciting prostitutes.
How the hell did you know?
I'd like to say I could read your mind, but I'd be lying. Let's just say an open car door told me, together with a pile of discarded cigarette butts, and another door that closed on my foot.
I'm not even going to ask what that means. What are you going to do, arrest Hughes?
Under normal circumstances, I would, and then leave it at that for a jury to decide with my conscience clear. But I made a young girl a promise to find her mother's murderer, and it isn't Hughes. If you want to know what I'm doing, I'm not doing anything today, only phoning the office to give them the name of the murderer, his badge number, and his motive. Hughes was likely Jane's last trick on Main Street. They can deal with it. It's Saturday, and I have a whole day with my daughter due. With the call closed, she picked up the photo of Jess, kissed it, and then said, "Just a phone call to make, and then I'll be there for you." Dear listener, if you've enjoyed the story, don't forget to like it and to subscribe for more stories to come. Declan Conner is the author of a catalog of full-length psychological crime and speculative thriller fiction books available on Amazon in all territories. You'll find the link in the description.